remarkably good. I would like to ask you, do you think Americans get an alternative perspective on their lives on a daily basis?
I think increasingly they do. Maybe I'm an unusual viewer of television, but I certainly would not miss an evening without tuning into BBC World to get an idea of what's going on in other countries. It's usually unavailable on American media, and I think more and more what you will have developing is what I would call the pluralist media consumer. And I think more and more we will see in the coming years with the advances in technology and the increased information available. Imagine 10 million new people online in India every month. Imagine a tiny, impoverished West African country named Gambia where more than half the people have cell phones. So I think more and more these alternative sources of information are going to become available within any given national information space. And therefore, increasingly, people will be better informed and will expect to get their answers from different sources than their own national media.
Mr. Heil, I understand and I agree with that, but that is true of other countries. My question about the United States. For instance, if you look in Africa, now we have what is called 3 ± 1 language rule. People end up either with 3 languages or 4 or 2 languages. The United States is one of the few countries moving in the direction of monolingualism. If you look at other countries which are relatively closed societies, U.S. made it its business to beam messages into them to open them to international competing pluralistic news. Where is the reverse order of that information flow?
Well, the reverse order, you see, I mean, if you go back into World War II, Dr. Joseph Goebbels is a prime example of that. I mean, his broadcasts to the West were in English, and he wanted to make it a point. And Adolf Hitler, of course, he was following his policies. And then in the same breath, if you look down at Pearl Harbor, I think it was just a matter of, 43 or 49 days before the Voice of America started operating. And the Americans actually wanted to have the voice there outside as well. So this media war or communication war has started, I would say, in modern times during the Second World War, and it has continued. And even in the Vietnam War, we've seen Ho Chi Minh City having their own, radio broadcasts in English, telling the American soldiers that, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that right, and so on and forth, and vice versa, Voice of America retaliating to it. Now, all this has continued because where it matters, the universal language will be used. Where it really actually matters to home in a political point, home in an ideology. But where it matters as a general news, I don't think that is going to be effective.
You see, if you look at, for instance, Iraq, or you look at Pakistan, you look at Bangladesh, people are listening to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different channels. So the media literacy is far higher and far greater. And that is being guaranteed by programs like Ms. Dubinsky's program, where there is a specific technological beaming in of these messages so people call and listen to it. On the other hand, I teach at a university, and I think I can give you some sense of my sampling of my students. They hardly listen to one single source. So what I'm saying here is, where is the equivalent of that open, globalized society where we say nationalism is not going to change or disappear anytime soon? Fine. But even the context of multinational pluralistic perspectives, are they flowing back into this country?
Well, I think one thing that is happening is that if you look at the proliferation of English language channels around the world, you have the Chinese now with a 24-hour-a-day website. You have Russia Today going on the air also with a 24/7 service. You have the Iranians expanding their service. You have even the French with an English television service that's now up to 8 hours and will be increased shortly. So there is a move toward using the universal language as a transmitter of a variety of ideas. And so that may be partly what you're asking in terms of the United States.
I'm asking exactly that, but I'm also sort of not asking you to comment on the fact that in 2004 at the Democratic Party convention, when Al Jazeera had their banner up, they were asked to take it down. Al Jazeera, even of today, they have 98 million households worldwide. They have only 150,000 in the United States. Most of them through satellite system in the Dearborn and Michigan areas. So why is, when we are promoting competition in other countries by all these artistic means and these technological means, we are blocking the same pluralistic competition of ideas and news sources in this country.
If it can be done, because I think the thing that I've noticed lately in studying the media internationally is that Al Jazeera is on the website. And more people, more and more web viewers are looking at it in video on the website, regardless of whether a station grants a license
Mr. Heil, that
to it.
hardly shows us the openness of the society to a competing idea. What would you say?
They're not permitted to go on the airwaves, and that is ridiculous.
So there is a Russia-like, ban on the flow of news into this country. What we are saying is they should the principle is wonderful, let there be free flow of information in all directions.
Well, there is actually freedom for this flow of information. Russia today is not the only example of penetration of Russian media in the United States. They do have, well, I can tell you, they do have monthly or even weekly editions of Russian newspapers in the Washington Post, in New York Times, so you can read a lot of Russian, perspective of world events or of events in Russia itself. Now, a lot of Russian channels now are working on having their satellite broadcast here in the United States, and Americans are open-minded to that. Russia is blocking American broadcast. It's a different matter. But nobody is blocking Russian broadcast here in the United States. They do have Russian channels here.
True, but
and not only Russian, by the way. You can watch Arabic, you can watch, in French, you can watch in German, any languages. If you have cable television, well, I understand it's not that democratic. Some people do not subscribe to cable. But if you do have cable, you do have access to a to a variety of languages.
Even cable has not given access as yet to Al Jazeera English,
Right.
all right? So the first channel that has truly started to compete, located in a different paradigm, BBC is located in the same paradigm. This was the first major channel located in a different paradigm, has been blocked. So I think this is where U.S. is failing to live up to its own ideals and principles. And that's the question of, what I want to ask you is, what do you see the shape of news in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Do you think these difficulties are going to be overcome, these hurdles will be removed, and there'll be free flow of information in all directions, or this will be the continued pattern of news?
See, this will change. Obviously there'll be a time when it has to change. I mean, as much as Al Jazeera, when it first came, it came with a big bang, and everybody started looking. I mean, the regular channels and the regular media started looking. Excuse me, but who is this? And where are they coming from? And then all of a sudden, after a few sensational news items, particularly relating to bin Laden, this channel actually made inroads, and people started looking at it. And then, in the same breath, this channel was banned in Iraq for certain reasons, and it was banned for 1 month. And then here, as you say, why isn't it being allowed here, is probably because I feel the authorities might feel that it's probably not giving the right message. Because here...
But that is the argument of every dictator, that you're not giving the right message, and they always have a reason to prove that.
Do we have a dictator here?
Well, partly it's a dictatorial regime in the sense of not allowing that information. It need not be a dictator. It could be a democratically elected leader acting as a dictator when he or she does not allow the rule of law. For instance, in this country, Judge John Gleeson on June 14, 2006 said, if you are not a citizen, you can be arrested solely on the basis of your religion, country of origin, or ethnicity, and held indefinitely without explanation. Go and look at the New York Times front page. David Cole has filed a suit against that. He has not been able to get it overturned. When in the United States a judge says you can be arrested for being a Muslim indefinitely without explanation, that's the definition of fascism. So U.S. is democratic.